The air was thick with fog and fear on that cold morning in northern France. Beneath gray skies, thousands of armored knights, gleaming in polished steel, prepared to crush a smaller, weary English army. But what they didn't know was that their end wouldn't come from swords or lances, but from the sky itself. Arrows would rain like iron death, turning proud nobles into broken corpses. Before we dive into this tragic, awe-inspiring moment of history, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and join us as we uncover how a single encounter changed medieval warfare forever. The year was 1415, and King Henry V led his English forces deep into France, their bodies worn by disease and hunger after the siege of Harfleur. The knights of France, certain of victory, mocked their ragged enemies. They were armored like gods, their horses plated in steel. Across the muddy fields of Agincourt, they stood ready to destroy the English once and for all. Yet in the shadows, rows of men tightened their bowstrings. Peasants by birth, soldiers by necessity. These were England's Longbowmen, the ghosts of a new kind of war. As the French advanced, the ground trembled under the hooves of hundreds of war horses. The sound was thunder itself, rolling, unstoppable, divine. But then came another sound, sharper, faster, more terrible. The hiss of 10,000 arrows slicing through air, descending like divine punishment. In seconds, the first line of knights fell screaming. Their armor, thought invincible, became their tombs. Arrows pierced joints, islets, throats. Horses bucked and trampled their own masters. Panic spread, and the proud French charge faltered before it ever reached the English lines. The longbow wasn't new, but at Agincourt, it became legend. Each English archer could shoot 6 arrows per minute, each one capable of piercing armor from 200 yards. They didn't need to face the night, they rained death from above. As one historian wrote, it was as if the heavens themselves turned against chivalry. The French knights, weighed down by pride and plate, had no chance. They sank into the mud like stones. And for the first time in centuries, the age of the knight began to die. Imagine the scene. The battlefield transformed into a swamp of blood and steel. The cries of dying horses, the clang of armor, the suffocating stench of mud and fear. The English archers stood behind wooden stakes, calm and unflinching. Every movement was mechanical: draw, release, breathe. To them, it wasn't honor or glory. It was survival. They had no titles, no banners, no inheritance. But their discipline and their weapon would forever shatter the idea that nobility decided victory. The arrow became the great equalizer. By midday, the French army was chaos incarnate. Those behind trampled those in front, trapped in a deadly funnel of their own making. Their shining armor, so heavy it once inspired awe, now condemned them. Men drowned in mud because they couldn't stand back up. Some begged for mercy, others for air. Even the English, hardened by war, felt horror at the sight before them. It wasn't a battle, it was a massacre written in rain and blood. Henry V, watching from his command position, knew the significance of what unfolded. His archers had done what no knightly charge could accomplish. They broke the backbone of the most powerful cavalry in Europe. Yet even victory came with sorrow. The field was littered with bodies of men who had once believed themselves untouchable. The world had shifted in those few brutal hours, and no one, not king nor soldier, could ever go back. The English longbow was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of the changing world. Crafted from yew, tall as a man, it demanded strength and years of training. The men who mastered it became human engines of war. Their fingers bled, their shoulders warped from years of pulling a 100-pound draw weight. But they wielded something no sword could match: distance. They could kill before the enemy even saw their faces. Across Europe, tales of Agincourt spread like wildfire. Chroniclers described how proud French knights fell like leaves before the storm. The chivalric order, once the heartbeat of medieval warfare, began to look foolish. How could armor and lineage matter when a peasant's arrow could bring down a duke? The myth of noble invincibility cracked that day, and the sound of that shattering echoed for generations. But behind victory lay quiet tragedy. Thousands of archers returned home to poverty and silence. There were no songs for them, no statues raised. Their hands had changed history, but their names were forgotten. They had served their king, not their pride. Yet in every forgotten grave, in every broken bow, lay the ghost of a revolution, a moment when the powerless proved they could shape destiny with wood and sinew. The battlefield of Agincourt itself became sacred ground. Travelers spoke of hearing ghostly arrows whistling through the night, of seeing armored specters crawling through the mud, forever trying to rise. Whether legend or truth, the place remained cursed, a reminder that pride and steel mean nothing before ingenuity and precision. It was not strength that won that day. It was skill, patience, and the terrible beauty of the longbow. The French knights had followed a code of honor older than memory. They believed courage and armor made them invincible. But the world was changing. Warfare was no longer ritual. It was science, calculation, and terror from afar. The English archers were not bound by the code of chivalry. They fought to live, and that made them unstoppable. For every arrow loosed, another page of the old world burned. Even centuries later, historians still marvel at how a small, outnumbered army crushed a force 3 times its size. The longbow was more than a weapon. It was a message that no man, no class, no empire is immune to change. It whispered that progress often comes drenched in blood. And as those arrows fell, they carried the weight of a new age, the dawn of strategy over valor, of invention over tradition. Henry V would later be celebrated as a warrior king, his victory immortalized by Shakespeare's pen. But behind the poetry was mud, disease, and men dying nameless deaths. Those archers who stood barefoot in the cold, their faces hidden beneath grime, were the true architects of victory. Their bows carved the legend that kings would later claim. It's easy to romanticize battles long past, but Agincourt was not glorious. It was grotesque. The field became a slaughterhouse where nobility drowned beside peasants, and armor clanked uselessly against mud. The cries of the wounded filled the air for hours after the fighting stopped. The longbow had rewritten the rules, but at an unspeakable cost. The old world didn't die quietly, it screamed. For the French, Agincourt was humiliation, an open wound that festered for decades. Many nobles refused to believe commoners had bested them. They blamed mud, terrain, fate. But deep down, they knew the truth. The longbow had exposed the flaw in their pride. The battlefield no longer cared who you were. It only cared how well you adapted. As Europe watched, armies began to change. Knights still rode into battle, but their glory faded. Fortresses were redesigned, armor grew thicker, and crossbows and early firearms followed the longbow's legacy. The idea of the lone, noble warrior faded into myth. War had become collective, a symphony of skill, not ego. In English villages, archery became law. Every man was required to practice on Sundays, ensuring the kingdom would never again be caught unprepared. Churchyards echoed with the twang of bowstrings. It was said that the English nation was built on the shoulders and bent backs of archers. They were the invisible guardians of the realm. Today, historians see Agincourt as more than just a victory. It was the moment when the medieval world began to crumble. The longbow was both executioner and prophet, ending one era and ushering in another. The power once held by armored nobles passed into the hands of common men, and with it, the world itself began to shift toward modernity. And so, the story of Agincourt endures, not because of kings or crowns, but because of ordinary men who defied the impossible. Their arrows silenced centuries of arrogance and reshaped history with precision and courage. As we look back on that field of mud and blood, we are reminded that innovation often begins with desperation. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and join us next time as we uncover more moments that change the course of humanity forever.